a strategic move aimed at fortifying the operations of the periodization operators in Nigeria. The Central Bank of Nigeria has raised the bar by revising the capital requirement and introducing new guidelines to govern their activities. Under the new directives, BDC operators in Nigeria will now be required to meet a minimum capital threshold of 2 billion naira for Tier 1 license holders, signifying a substantial increase from the previous benchmark. And similarly, Tier 2 license holders will need to maintain a capital base of 500 million, marking a departure from the previous requirement of 35 million for a general license. But how does this impact the FX market amid the exchange rate crisis? Let's find out now. I've been joined by a policy and public affairs analyst, Mr. Sumbo Badejiko. He joins me now via the telephone. Thank you, Mr. Sumbo. We appreciate your time. Hello, Mr. Sumbo, can you hear me?
I can barely hear you. I've been trying to complain about the reception.
Okay.
I heard the person clearly, but...
All right. Can you hear me now, Mr. Sumbo? You are live on air now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, but not loud enough.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm trying to speak loud enough so you can hear me. I mean, we've seen this move seen as a transformative shift in the regulatory framework, narrowing down on the operations of BDCs. What do you make of this move? I mean, several clampdowns on the BDCs and speculators.
Can you repeat the question?
I'm asking you, this move to license BDCs, and of course the capital requirement for that license for national operation is 2 billion, and okay, for state operation is about 500 million. So I'm asking you, what do you make of this move?
It's a welcome development. Actually, the BDCs have been due for regulation for a very long time. It's the parallel market, and the only form of regulation that we had in there is the association that they have. But from the CBN side, there isn't much of regulation that has been with the BDC, and that's why you find so many activities going on there unchecked. But when you look at the market, is where the forex is being devalued astronomically to the extent that as of last year, even as of early this year, the difference between the official rate of the dollar and that of the parallel market was close to about 300 naira. That is huge arbitrage, and it's because there is no regulation. Everybody comes, you can bring in any amount of naira you have and go with any amount of dollar. But this regulation is a welcome development because there are now some kind of restrictions. The mode of operation of the BDCs have now been checked. But the thing is, implementation. Will they just give them this, or will they implement it to the letter? Does the CBN have enough manpower to really go monitoring the activities of these bureau de change operators? Because they also have responded through their association by kind of appealing to the CBN to look into it. So it shows that they too know that this new regulation is going to go a long way in covering their activities, especially when it has to do with the two types of licenses that are now being issued. There are so many of them that you don't even know. One license, and they operate in different branches under different guises. So the regulation is a way forward, and it will help the CBN in monitoring the forex transaction that goes on in the country.
A big jump in the capital requirement for license there, from 35 million to 2 billion, and of course you also have the one for for the state operation for 500 million. How is this increase likely to impact the number of existing BDC operators and of course the entry of new players in the market?
The raising up of that is to really streamline. They want serious people to be in business and not people that they will not be able to have control over. 2 billion is not too much for a financial institution, because whether we like it or not, the BDCs are also a form of financial institution, and they trade in foreign currency. So it will streamline. It means there's a room for those who could not afford to merge with those who can afford, or sell off their equity. We want serious people in business that they will be able to relate with. So I don't see the the rising of the benchmark or the minimum that they need to have. I don't see that as a problem. It's a welcome development. Like I said earlier, it's actually something that was in long due. So kudos to the CBN for taking this bold step. But the other side to it will be those who are actually coming to patronize them. So a lot was said about those who are non-residents. But residents, especially those who have access to each volume of Naira that will come in, that is where I think there's need to be checked. A lot was said about PTA, those for those traveling, and BTA for those who are going for businesses. But individuals who are actually targeting using the dollar as store of value or using it for laundry purposes, not much has been said in that regulation that I read about this.
So what would be your recommendation to that regard?
Yes, they have to be an amendment to that. They have to maybe, first of all, encourage the government to do all their dealings in Naira. And also, at the level of the CBN, as much as possible, the government should also look inward in terms of procurement. A lot of government procurements are being sourced in foreign currency, and these are things that the CBN would not want to. There are sometimes that there will be shortage of liquidity, and government officials will have to go to this BDC because they are in government or they have some connection within the CBN. They just go through. Then banks too, that's commercial banks, though it's stated there that no bank owner or anybody related to a bank should be part of it. But we still have all this going on behind the back. So there needs to be proper enforcement about the activities of those who are holding top position in commercial banks, as well as the CBN, as well as those who are in government offices, so that they would not be using government funds to store dollar, to convert government funds to dollars and use it as a store of value or launder it abroad. This is one way to go if they would ensure, because to put everything at the doorstep of BDC, you can regulate them, but they are not the only ones responsible for the arbitrage level that we have.
Let's look at a few things before I let you go, Mr. Sumbo. CBN is also mandating that under Tier 1, especially for the one with a 2 billion Naira license, a minimum of 5 board members and a maximum of 9, while the Tier 2, which operations are limited to state, is expected to have 7 members subject to approval from the CBN. Some have said this structure is typical of a limited liability company. So what do you think this portends for the economy? Because as an entity, of course, you are driven by profit and you want to make profit. So what changes do you think this is expected to bring into the market? Will it bring any disruption? What happens to the commercial banks?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
Okay. I was asking you on the structure of operations, how some of the BDCs operate. For instance, for the national license, you must not have less than 5 and you must not have more than 9. And for the state, you must not have, at least you must have like 7. So this is typical of a profit or a company driven by profit. So I'm asking you, what disruption do you think this structure will bring into the financial sector? The banking sector is there. The commercial banks are there before now, and they've been used as the point of sale for foreign exchange before now.
Yes, it would help in a way because they too will now operate like the commercial banks, but heavily streamlined. The absence of regulation at the issue has led to a kind of informalization of the sector that is not formalized, and you have a lot of vendors. Go to any Sabo community in any state where you see people asking you, do you want to exchange dollars? This is what the new measure will curb. So you now know that they must have an office with a stated address for people to go in. Because if you look at the population of the country, around 0.2% of our populations are the ones that are actually dealing with Forex. But their own excesses affect the rest of the population. So it's not that everybody is going for the forex, and it will help the government to also put a check into those organizations that are using forex as the medium of exchange within our economy. So once they are regulated, you know that in state A, say if for your state, for instance, you know the number of BDCs that we have. They will have a website. The CBN will, since they know their figures can be, their address can be published on the CBN website, state by state. You know the number in your state, we have 10 of them. These are their locations. The people will now be able to access their locations through the CBN website and go and locate them and deal with them directly. If they could do that, it will go a long way in helping to streamline the system. It will take away the vendors that are always on the streets, approaching people to. And once people know that the vendors are no longer there, even those who want to use this for illegal activities will have to go through the right channel. And of course, in the new regulation, receipt of what they are using it for must also be tendered, and this will be forwarded to the CBN. So that is the way I would recommend that they put their proper details are published on the CBN website, and the addresses will be located. You may not put a limitation to the number of BDC that can exist in a state, as many that can exist, especially in commercial states like Lagos and Ogun, Port Harcourt, Delta State, FCT, Kanu, Kaduna. These are states where you have big enterprises and are going on. Of course, there's each exchange of the foreign currency going on in this respective cosmopolitan state. So we can definitely have the number of BDCs that will be there as much as the state can accommodate. Then the state governors too, the state government at the state level should also be incorporated, because this is a matter that concerns the economy. They too need to really have a role to play inwards, especially in terms of allocation and also monitoring. So it is the sole responsibility of the CBN to do this. But at least we can work in collaboration, especially in the area of monitoring, to ensure that the activities of the vendors are streamlined to a bearable minimum.
I'm going to let you go in a moment, Mr. Badejoko. Let's look at some of the key areas addressed in the guidelines. BDCs can now issue PTAs. That's personal travel allowance and, of course, business travel allowance. So talk to us. They are also talking about the fact that operators, had just few amount. For instance, they are now going to act as agents to the international money transfer operators as well. So speak to us, how much of easy would this be? So do you think Nigerians can now have access, to BTAs and PTAs easily now?
Yeah, I said that's the streamlining will help them to operate like the commercial bank. I said that in my earlier remarks. That is what the advantage it will bring. CBN is reducing the pressure on the commercial bank and transferring a bulk of it to the bureau de change. But now that they are streamlined, they will be operating like a micro forex foreign exchange market, not the official one now, because it's going to make things easy for those who are maybe wanting to get BT. If you have approached the commercial bank, you couldn't get, but they will still be operating. I mean, the BDC themselves can still operate, will have accounts with the commercial bank according to the regulations. So whatever excess, there's a limit to what they can give you. And if you are going to sell to them, there's also a limit. And if you're a foreigner, you enter the country, you have collected the naira from them, and you couldn't finish it when you are leaving. You have to bring it back to the same BDC to exchange for you. So that is a good thing, in as much as it would be properly implemented. One thing with Nigeria is that we are very brilliant when it comes to policy formulation and putting regulation in place. But we are very poor when it comes to implementation. That is where my concern is. If this thing is properly implemented, it's a welcome development. It will be for the good of the entire country, because the forex arbitrage going on at the parallel market will be stopped in a way, because you are regulating the demand for the foreign currency, and you want to know what anybody demanding for it is going to use it for. But we should also look at boosting the supply, because the scarcity is making the BDC wanting to speculate the price on the high side. So if that is due, it will now create a balance for us to have a favorable foreign exchange rate in the country.
A good place to leave it. Policy analyst Visa Sumbabajiko, thank you for coming on Business Nigeria.